what does the word gutsy mean to you?
It means the willingness to take a leap and support yourself regardless of what the outcome is.
You're listening to the Gutsy Podcast, where we talk about all things real, raw, and ridiculous about running a business authentically. Whether you need an inspirational pick-me-up or a swift kick in the mental ass, the Gutsy Podcast is your bi-weekly guide to getting out of your head and back into action. I'm Laura Ora, branding and mindset coach for female entrepreneurs, and your host on this journey through entrepreneurship. It's time to fuel your gutsy. Did you know that 92% of people are affected by perfectionism in the workplace? Yeah, that's right. You heard me. 92%. Perfectionism affects your mental health, relationships, ability to advance, and you guessed it, leads straight to burnout. So how do you shift away from perfectionism while also maintaining your high integrity for doing things well? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today with holistic leadership coach Chana Ross. Chana is a highly passionate women's health advocate and host of the She Has Audacity podcast. Renowned for her expertise in pelvic health, prenatal preparation, and the realities of parenthood, Chana is a sought-after educator and speaker who inspires her clients to take charge of their health and their lifestyle. She's a true champion for high-achieving women, helping them overcome perfectionist tendencies and align with their why to achieve their dreams. Before we chat with Chana, I want to invite you to download the free private podcast experience that I've created called Foundations for Getting Out of Your Own Head. This is a 5-day private podcast experience where I'm going to cut through the noise and be your guide to breaking free from what's holding you back. You want to know what that is? Your thoughts. You're going to learn the clear and simple method that's going to allow you to reframe your thoughts, nurture your inner child, and take your power back in your life and in your business. All in short, sweet, yet super impactful audios, just like you're used to listening to here on the Gutsy Podcast. If you're ready to learn how to get out of your own head and begin to take steps forward towards the things that you actually want, go to lauraora.com/foundations to get started today. All right, my friend, in this space today, we're talking about having and experiencing freedom from perfectionism. So let's get into today's episode. Chana Ross, welcome to the Gutsy Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Yeah, likewise. So fun fact for everyone listening, Chana and I had an opportunity to chat on her podcast, which is all about having audacity, which is really cool. So I'll make sure that we link that in the show notes in case you want to cross-reference and go back and listen to that episode. So it's nice to
It was
reconnect
a
and
good
have
one.
you. Yeah, it was a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about perfectionism. We're going to dig into like what that means and how to overcome it and just talk about the realness behind that. But first, I want to hear the realness behind you. Talk to me about your entrepreneurial journey. What has led you to the space that you're in right now?
Okay. So I'm going to, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I call
Absolutely.
myself a accidental entrepreneur. And I think that a huge piece of it stems from my tendency towards perfectionism, we'll call it. I am a pelvic health physiotherapist. So I'm a pelvic floor physiotherapist. What does that mean? It means I'm a regular old physiotherapist. I see clients of all ages and stages, but we have the ability to perform internal vaginal rectal exams. So I see clients who are prenatal, postpartum, going through perimenopause, postmenopause, who are experiencing leaking, low back pain, sexual health issues. What I mean with all of this is we get into the nitty gritty and we talk about things that are deeply ingrained in us to be ashamed of. And we have very open, honest, and empowering conversations. And I was seeing clients and they were, when I would tell people during dinner parties what I do, and they're like, so you do what now? Like most people are not having these conversations and I have them day in and day out. I have them because I needed pelvic floor physiotherapy. I am also the mother of 4 children. And between babies 2 and 3, I was very into this idea of getting my body back, which is a pill sold to many of us to always look like everything's fine. And it's totally fine if you feel like garbage all the time, as long as you look like you're fine. And so I was doing P90X, Tony Horton. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It was back in the day. We're talking about 2010, give or take. It was a series of DVDs, and one of those DVDs was plyometrics, and there was one exercise called Rockstar Jumps. It is as fun as it sounds. You hold your guitar in one hand, you strum your guitar with the other hand, and you jump up and kick your feet to your bum at the same time. And every time I did that, I would pee my pants. And I went to my doctor and I told her I was having these symptoms. And she was like, let's send you for testing. They sent me for testing and everything looked fine. She was like, you're fine. And so I went through this experience of going through a medical system that just keeps telling women that they're fine, to stop complaining. What did you expect? You just had a baby. And we see that in all ages and stages of life, where we're just told to just be, just look fine and you're fine and act like everything's fine, even if you're falling apart inside and you see things are falling apart inside, as long as you just keep pretending that you're fine and acting like you're fine, we're all fine. And a friend of mine was getting trained in this area called pelvic floor physiotherapy. When she explained to me what she was going to do, I was like, oh, hell no. You are not coming anywhere near me with your fingers, because pelvic floor physio, you can assess internally, vaginally, and rectally. And needless to say, she convinced me, she, with informed consent, described what she was going to do. And it literally changed my life. It changed my life because I suddenly understood how my body worked. I understood that I was not broken, that there wasn't something deeply wrong with me and fine with everybody else. I understood that most people are not having these conversations, and especially what we're going to talk about today, most people are not having these conversations. We all think we're supposed to just keep it all together all the time. And more than that, more than understanding that my body was not broken, she gave me tools to help support me from the inside out. And all of a sudden I realized, like, I want to do this. It actually changed the entire course of what I was doing. So I went from seeing people with back pain and neck pain and hip pain and sports injuries, and I was like, I am going to talk about vaginas. I'm going to talk about leaking. I'm going to talk about sexual pain, because nobody else is talking about this. And we are all deeply ingrained to be ashamed of this. And we are hiding the fact that we feel broken inside. And we're walking around with this underlying story of there's something deeply wrong with me. And I have to, number one, secretly find a way to repair it, and also never let anybody else know about it. And I started off just telling people, and they'd be like, well, I don't know, what you do what for a living? And then suddenly, like, somebody would whisper to their friend, when I cough or sneeze, I'm leaking. And they're like, oh, well, I was talking to Hannah and she told me that she does this. So that people would like call me and like not tell them. Like, my friend said that you do this thing. And I'm like, yeah, of course I do this thing. And I literally started with a massage table I would drop off my kids at school. I would go see one client after another. I would drive to their homes. Then I'd go pick up my kids from school. Then I'd take them to their after school activities, give them dinner, put them to bed, and then I'd go out and see more clients. And I ended up, there's a lot of people who don't want to talk about this. And there's also a lot of people who are deeply ashamed and really, really want to feel whole again. And so one friend talked to another friend, talked to another friend, and I was suddenly, back to back with clients 5 days a week and in the evenings. And I was experiencing significant amounts of road rage. Let's just say that. And I got to a place where I was like, okay, I need to physically have a place. So I rented a space in a doctor's office. And I filled up there too. And the thing is, I was just so passionate. I am so passionate about this topic that I just wouldn't shut up. And some people were put off by it, some people weren't. But slowly but surely it grew. And it grew to a place where I was like, I need to hire somebody and I need more space. And I ended up taking this space. I was like, okay, I'm going to build a clinic. I didn't know, I had no idea what I was doing. Just throwing caution to the wind. We're like, all right, if worst comes to worst, we help a lot of people. Worst comes to worst, I go back and I just rent space again. Like either there's no real, like, I was willing to fail, but I knew that we needed more people helping more people. I knew I needed to train people in order to do this. And throughout all this time, I had this like deep seated belief that like I need to learn more. I need to learn more. So I was taking course after course after course after course. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was really distilling down like my signature system of care. And we started to see clients who had seen other physios who specialized, quote unquote, in this area, but weren't seeing results. And they would come to us and we would see results. And as I was discussing it, I started to hire therapists and train them, and they were coming from other places too. And the thing that was different about us was we were talking about our thoughts. We were talking about, I know that you're coming in here because you feel like you are broken. I know that when you go home and you don't do that homework, you're beating yourself up that you should have been perfect. Like we started to have conversations around how do we give you homework to do? Because I'm very open with my therapist too. Like we are not fixers. I'm not here to fix anybody. Nobody is broken, but we are people and we deserve support. So how do we just support the clients who come in here to help them achieve their goals? Let's not approach them like people who need to be fixed. Let's approach them like human beings who have outcomes that they're looking for, who we can support them to get them there. And this is the way that we support them. And so slowly we built this system, a signature care system to help people. And I started to realize that like, oh my God, like I'm a leader now in this business that grew because I won't shut up. And so I went and I started to get leadership. I had to reach out to coaches to support me with my leadership because I was just like flying by the seat of my pants. And being the owner of the business, as it grew and I need to hire people, I actually needed to pull myself away from client care. I see clients once a week now. I spend most of my time coaching my practitioners, coaching my employees, and actually coaching the women who came through our physiotherapy, quote unquote, and are like, I need more of this in my life. I'm not leaking my pants anymore. I'm not having pain with sex anymore, but I need this in my life. And they are incredibly what I would call high achieving women. And they recognize that they want to be high performers. They don't want to be high achievers. High achievers come at the expense of me. I am going to do at the expense of me. High performers care for ourselves every step of the way. And we get better outcomes in that way. But we've all been taught in this like all or nothing thinking, this like net zero perspective of like, I throw myself all in or I'm going to be nothing. And so I've become very passionate about perfectionism. Number one, because like literally I used to underline when I would do a math problem, I would do 1+1 with my ruler. And I do the line equals 2. For those of you, 1+1 is 2, in case you're wondering. But like I know it so well. And I also know that in my evolution, it's become the biggest stumbling block. And I've just watched these women blossom when they start to address their perfectionism, again, not as a problem to be fixed, but an area where they would benefit from support.
Mm. Stunning story, by the way. I thank you for taking us to that journey because I think deep breath. You're like, isn't it great to like tell that story though from time to time because I think it helps you to like reconnect and remember. Not that your passion has gone away, but sometimes just slowing down long enough to be like, holy shit, like I walked that path. I did that, and this is where I've landed. And I think something that's kind of interesting too is what I heard several times throughout your story is what you're doing now is not necessarily what you set out to do, but your
I would have
calling.
never said that this is where I was going to go.
Yeah, your calling, your purpose, your mission, whatever you want to call it, unfolded when you followed your curiosity and noticed the things that lit you up. And I think that
Yes.
that's just such an important message because I think sometimes we're just like really hyper fixated on like figuring out like, okay, what is my purpose and how do I do it? Where it's really more of a journey and an experience where you follow these kind of breadcrumbs and all of a sudden you find yourself in a place where like, oh, this is the thing. This is what I was
Hmm.
intended to do. So
Yes.
the other thing that really kind of came up is just this need for vulnerability. Oh, my friend, like, you know, on the podcast here inside the Gutsy Collective, like all the conversations that we're having, the more that women allow themselves to open up and the more that they have the space and the support to do it in, I'm telling you, like I've literally chills right now. Fucking magic happens when
Yeah.
a woman
Oh, you're so right.
can freely say what they're thinking and feeling and know they're not being judged, they're not being criticized, they're, people aren't going to turn around and talk about them behind their backs. Like when you really truly feel supported and heard, it's like, one, gosh, that energy exchange, just letting that out of your body is fucking amazing. But two, it's it's this growth internally with the people around you, right? Like it's just you just realize like, oh my God, I'm not the only one. I thought there was
Yes.
something broken with me, and I'm hearing that's what
Yes.
you're experiencing as well.
100%. And it's funny because as we have these conversations, this science is actually evolving to support exactly what we're doing. Like we used to say there's like a brain body connection. There's no brain body connection. The brain and body are one and the same. So we look at people from a biopsychosocial model of care, which means your biology, like literally your physical body responds to your psychology and all of the social determinants of health, your connections, your, what you're putting in and around you and how you're speaking to yourself. Like doesn't impact your health. That is your health. And
Hmm.
so we cannot support you physically if we're not addressing the other pieces. If you are beating yourself up if every time you go to the gym, you're like, oh, you're so fat, you're so this, you're so that, you're not working hard enough. Like, you're not going to feel good. But if we go and we're like, I'm here to learn. Okay, today I'm learning, I'm lifting 2 pounds. My goal is 5. And man, I'm showing up for myself and I know that I'm going to get there. You're actually going to physically have an entirely different experience.
Absolutely. It is one of the same. Like when
Yeah.
you're explaining that, I'm like, we're not like a couch and a sofa or in a love seat. We're not two separate pieces of furniture sitting around together. Like the brain body connection is one.
Yeah.
It is us as human beings. And then when we talk about things like perfectionism and how what's happening in our heads is affecting our bodies. Like, I'm kind of even interested from your perspective. Have you found any connection between perfectionism tendencies and female health, right? Like, are our brains affecting our
Yes.
vaginas?
Yes. So, like, first of all, the way that we speak to ourselves creates a cascade of events. Like, um, we are very like hormone and neurotransmitter dependent humans. So when I see clients who are in like the go, 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 like if I say to somebody, are you stressed? More than often than not, they're going to say no to me. Why? Like I'm here in Toronto, Canada. Everybody is stressed. But we've habituated to be at capacity. If we are nervous system is at capacity, we feel like that's normal. That's just our every single day. But our body is not that we're not created to be at that level all the time. We think that when we're in overdrive, well, that's stress. No, no, no. Being on all day, every day, trying to be perfect in every single part of our lives, that is stressful for our system. What does that mean? It means that our brain literally thinks it's running away from a tiger all the time. We're producing the hormones like we're running away from a tiger all the time. And what's that experience like in your body? Well, you're going to shunt blood away from your digestion. You're going to throw it to, your very large organs that are important in running away from a tiger. Your blood pressure is going to be up. Your nervous system is going to be up. And funny story, you shunt blood and attention away from your pelvic floor when you're running away from a tiger. Why? Because when your brain thinks it's literally going to die, it doesn't make sense to have a nice, slow, gentle bowel movement while you're sitting on the grass, or to just like be like, should I go just in case? Let's go. Or to like grab a quickie with your honey. Like none of that is happening when your brain thinks it's running away from a tiger. So it actually just takes these muscles and it tightens them up. By the way, same thing with your neck muscles. Like many of us feel like pain in our neck and our jaw when we're particularly stressed. A lot of us experience it as pelvic floor symptoms, leaking, back pain, hip pain, painful sex, constipation, like all those type of symptoms. Because literally, your brain sends a message to your pelvic floor to go into a persistent Kegel, and we don't know how to relax our pelvic floors because no one has taught us. And funny enough, your pelvic floor and your diaphragm, they actually work together as a system. So when we're in fight or flight, we're doing all these upper chest quick breaths, using our neck muscles to breathe. If we start to stop and go into those slow, gentle, diaphragmatic breaths a couple of times a day, you're not only benefiting your pelvic floor and your digestion and your lungs and your respiratory system, but you're actually creating capacity in your nervous system. Which means when we're in that fight or flight and we're trying to do everything perfectly, and you're trying to like never drop a ball and never keep everything look good and take care of yourself and be amazing at your job and take care of your family if you've got one, and also make sure that you're connecting with all your friends and you're taking care of getting in touch with your parents and like do all the things all the time, your brain perceives that as fight or flight the same way like if you're running away from a tiger. And when we're in that persistent state, we're literally in a reflexive state. You're not coming up with creative thoughts. You're not coming up with creative ways to address the circumstances that you're in. You're just in a reflexes. You're just going to always do what you've always done, which is why, we go to it like, you're not going to eat well. You're not going to sleep well. You're just going to go back to those, sometimes we work so much on, responding differently to a trigger. But when you're in fight or flight and somebody says something to you, you're going to respond in the way that you used to when you were 15. You're like, gosh, like I thought I was so far past that. I've just spent, 4 years in therapy and coaching to work past that. If we can stop and slow the fuck down, I'm not saying, go and meditate and become like, and sit in an ashram and, you take an oath of silence for 5 months. I'm literally saying if we can 2, 3, 4 times a day, just take 10 slow, gentle breaths, you're actually going to give yourself capacity. You're going to give yourself the ability to think through in creative ways, and you're going to change your pelvic health, your diaphragmatic health, your digestive health, and your nervous system at the same time.
It's such a good reminder. Gosh. And you're right. I think sometimes we think slowing down means this whole situation, right? Like it almost becomes one more thing because we make it one more big ass thing where it's really just about intentionality, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to I I feel like the fight or flight, it's such a hot topic, right? Because I think now we all have awareness of it because we're all talking about it. And thank goodness for that, because before we're all just running around like stress balls, like losing our shit all the time and not
Very
understanding why.
technical, but I think I'm following what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, super, super, super technical. You're with me here. But yeah, my thought here is like, I feel like it's also a bit of a habit, right? Like we form habits out of repetition. And so while we may not be intentionally putting ourselves in situations of fight or flight, inadvertently, it can become a habit to be in fight or flight. And then add on, the physiology with that supports that. And, before you know it, you have this is our natural state. So how do
Yeah.
you start? I mean, you gave us this great exercise on the breathing. What are some ways to even just recognize and shift that when you get into it? Because what we want to do is prevent from being in that for so long, so often.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll say to that, like it's not just a habit, it's also how many of us have achieved success. And so we actually when we're met with a problem, we're like, okay, well, I'm just gonna go into high gear so that I can manage this problem. We actually haven't experienced success doing it differently yet. And so doing something different feels actually very unsafe for our nervous system.
I can
Um,
attest to that.
yeah, yeah. And so we resist trying something different.
Out of all of the women that I've talked to, surveyed, listened to, and watched transform, the number one thing that stops almost every single one of them from moving forward is not time, it's not resources, it's the shit that's happening in their own mind. Look, the conversations that you have in between your ears are going to be the loudest words that you ever hear. And when you don't have the tools or the support to know how to break that cycle, the cycle will continue. That is exactly why I created Foundations for Getting Out of Your Head, which is a free podcast experience delivered right to your inbox. I call it the Foundations for a reason. It's literally the method that I teach to all of my clients to begin to know how to get out of your own way and start taking steps forward toward the thing that you actually want. And great news, it's available right now. All you have to do is go to lauraora.com/foundations and you'll get the first podcast episode immediately. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So recently I sold my business, my very first business, and I sold
Okay.
my commercial building. And, looking back on that process, I can see how it was built on stress, right? That was the only,
Interesting.
yeah, right. Fascinating. Shocker too, right? Because it's all I've ever seen. It's how I thought I was supposed to.
Yeah.
It's childhood upbringing. It's a whole basket of shit, right?
Yeah.
And so now that I'm in this different phase and I'm building my brand differently, it takes a lot of intention to slow down and bring safety into my body because I'm not super stressed anymore. And I'm thank goodness for all of this, right? Like I'm so thankful to finally be in this space. And it's something I really want to talk about with everybody because going from building a very stressful business to building a business in a way that has ease, white space, like flow. At first, I'm like, everything's falling apart.
Yeah.
Things are going to hell in a
Yeah.
handbasket. Like something's wrong. I need to fix things because I'm not like constantly batting at and climbing and scratching up things. And that's what you're talking about. Is like
Yeah.
it it is still right now does not yet fully feel safe to have ease in my success.
Yes. And that's and the thing is that just comes with time.
Yeah.
And I think that there's huge value in just acknowledging that you're actually just in a growth phase. So it's going to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So many of us have been taught within the paradigm of a fixed mindset, right? I'm good at slowing down or I'm bad at slowing down. I'm smart or I'm dumb. I'm athletic or I'm not. And so, you would study and you'd get your A's, and like that's how you knew that you were perfect at it and that you were good and that you were good enough. But cultivating a growth mindset, which is, by the way, where we find, we're looking at the difference between high achievers and high performers. A growth mindset is one of the key differences that is going to help you with that evolution. Because a fixed mindset is like you're either good or you're bad, and so if you've achieved it, you're amazing, and if you haven't, you're nothing. Whereas a growth mindset is I'm here for growth. Like people, like it's the paradigm that we can change, we can improve, and that the abilities that we were born with is just the starting point. And
Absolutely.
we if we can just sit in that place of every setback is an opportunity to learn something and move forward. And the process itself is of value. It's not in for like building an amazing, proving that you can build an amazing business in ease. It's actually the process of learning that you're already gaining value from it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really also kind of about recognizing old tendencies, right? And intentionally choosing not to repeat the past. It's a lot of like checks and balances,
Mhm,
feeling like that
mhm.
pull in, recognizing it, and then restructuring, right? Feeling that need to like get online and do something real quick. And then I'm like, I don't need to. I have space built in for that tomorrow.
Yes,
Like it's
yes,
in every kind of micro moment and situation that I get to undo it. And so everyone listening, I want you to know that like these types of growth evolutions, no matter what type of journey that you're on, it doesn't just happen, right? It really truly boils down to these micro moments and choosing to recognize it and to do something different instead. That's how you
yeah.
make these shifts. That's how you introduce that safety into your body.
And I love that you're saying that because it doesn't mean it's comfortable. It's not easy to choose ease,
Yeah.
right? Because everything around us is telling us go hard, go home, push, push, do more. And all of our previous success has come from that place. And so, in choosing to do it differently, you have to be very selective about who you surround yourself with. You have to be selective about how you block your day, how you plan your day. You have to be selective about the thoughts that you're giving yourself permission to believe and to think. Because like I think Byron Katie says this, like a belief is just a thought we choose to think often, right? And so you've got these beliefs. And so in changing those beliefs, we actually have to be selective and choose different thoughts to think often again. And the new thoughts are like a rickety, unpaved dirt road and you're on a bike and the thoughts of go hard and go fast and go do more, that's like a well-paved 6-lane highway and you are in your Corvette, right? Like you've got that one made and it's going to feel uncomfortable to choose that new neural pathway because it's just your brain wants to go to the easy one. The easy one is the one you've done before, right? And the hard thing is to start to repave this new neural pathway of I'm going to give myself space. I'm going to do that next tomorrow. And I'm going to keep trust that it's going to work out amazingly. But it
Yeah.
has to be cultivated.
So how do you think that perfectionism is a key player in this whole situation? Because I feel like that one comes running to the front.
Yeah. So I think that perfectionism, it's funny because we mentioned before we went live, I'm reading this new book about perfectionism. It's called like The Perfectionist Guide to Losing Control. Anybody who's interested, it's by Catherine Morgan Schaeffler. And as I'm reading it, I'm learning my own new things about perfectionism because I really thought that perfectionism is like this idea that you have to be everything literally has to be perfect or it's unsafe. It's a method of maintaining control of holding control in an uncontrolled environment. It's the idea like it's all or nothing thinking, right? You're highly critical of yourself. It's very fear based. It's like it's the paradigm of not wanting to win, but it's actually not. It's instead of moving forward because you want to win, it's like the fear of losing, right? It's creating unrealistic standards that you'll never meet. You'll never meet. So you're just always in this loop of like, it's not enough, it's not enough, it's not enough. It's a deep seated, I am not enough. It is not enough. I am always, always, always not going to be enough. And in this book that I just mentioned, she speaks about how this idea. I am somebody who says all the time, I'm a recovering perfectionist, and then I always follow it up with like it's a long recovery. And what she points out is the idea of saying you're a recovering perfectionist takes perfectionism as being also something you're not doing well. Oh, I'm not. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
perfectionist, therefore I am not enough. And so she actually speaks about this idea of having perfectionist tendencies that are beneficial and ones that are, and the perfectionist tendencies which actually keep you stuck, and how you can actually take your perfectionism and create a very functional being from these baseline tendencies versus dysfunctional perfectionism, which keeps you stuck, keeps you in
Mm.
low self-esteem, keeps you defensive, keeps you procrastinating, keeps you in this not enoughness. How you can go from being you can go from being a very high achieving perfectionist to being a high performing perfectionist. and to not be down, keep looking at your perfectionism as something that's wrong with you, but actually as something that can push you into a direction of being really, really, really valuable and high performing, which I love.
Yeah, I love that more so much that I want to talk about it more. So, do you have any do you have any examples of the good ones that can be used to in your benefit, right? Like what are the differences between the two?
Yeah. So I think and I talk about this a lot first in the paradigm of, do you have a value of excellence, or are you valuing perfection? And I think that a lot of us, when we are looking at overcoming quote unquote our perfectionism, we're like, a lot of the recommendations are like, just do something badly or just do it sloppily, and then leave it and then sit with those feelings and try to, manage what feelings come up from that. And I think that's actually I really don't like that advice, because in my business, I actually really value excellence. We are really well trained. We are at the top of our game. And we can also hold space for self compassion as we work towards those things. And so um, we are committed to a high level, a high standard that can actually help us with peak levels of performance. When we think about Michael Jordan, for example, who's a high performer, he turned down things because he strove for excellence and he knew what values he cared about, and he just kept his personal values in mind in every decision he makes. When it comes to perfectionism and to being a high achiever and to never measuring up, I think a huge piece of that is just saying yes to everything and trying to be perfect in everything. And you can't do all the things all the time. It's a lack of not only boundaries, but clear values. Where do I want to put most of my time and effort? What are the most important to me? Do I care that that my kid has a bake sale and I'm buying um, that I'm buying the brownies that I'm making? Or can I just say no to that because that's not of value to me right now? I don't have to show up as like the perfect mom in that instance. I want to spend time with my kids after school, helping them with their homework. So I'm happy to order pizza or, do something else not perfectly. Where is it most important for that excellence to be expressed?
Ooh, that's good. That's good. It's the lack of boundaries and being everything to everyone and really understanding
Yes.
what is most important to you, what what is most important to show up for yourself in your world, and what do you really value? Because if you think about doing everything and being everything for everyone and then also trying to be perfect at all of it, what is that really saying? Right? What is that saying about ourselves? What is the message that it's putting out there? And then we wonder like, why am I feeling so bad? Why
Yeah.
physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally? It's like we really have to have these honest conversations with ourselves about like, what does excellence look like to me?
Yeah.
Because I I am I love excellence. Okay? Like that's
Same.
just it's just in my DNA. I like things a certain way. I value things a certain way, like, and
Yeah.
I'm just not willing to settle. But it's not like that with every tiny aspect, right?
Yes. Like
Like
I'm not, don't half ass your work, right?
yeah,
But like, you probably could order some groceries with your vegetables cut up and your fruit pre-cut up so that you can eat it. You know what I
right.
mean? I order all of my groceries. Am I going to get some apples that might be a little bit, a little bruised? Yeah. But like, I don't have to touch every single one in order for that to be good enough for my family.
Yeah. One that I have always ran into is like I really appreciate a clean space. Like
Mm-hmm.
I like my stuff put away. I like to work in a certain kind of atmosphere. It helps my brain to be more open and creative and fluid. But I've also given myself the grace that like when I'm actively working or I'm in the middle of something or I'm in a project, like it's actually really taken a while, but I've gotten to the point where if I'm not done with something, if I'm actively in a project, but I'm done for the day, I can feel okay walking away and leaving that there. right? Whereas before it
Yes.
would be like a non-negotiable, but now I invite that to be a part of my process. Like, hey, everything's kind of where it is right now because this is the part of the creative process that I'm in right now. And it's okay to let that be. But I also know that when I'm done, I'm going to put all that shit away because I want my clean space. I want my reset. So I think it's really also learning about like how you work, what you need, and also introducing that kind of grace and flexibility within your own tendencies as well.
Yes. And I think that this speaks to, there really are a number of areas in your life where done is better than perfect. Like I know that I feel good when I move 4 times a week. Sometimes I'm going to be lifting like more than I've ever done. Like I'm going to hit my best. And sometimes just showing up and moving is going to be good enough because I know that the momentum of showing up, even if I don't feel amazing, I will feel better afterwards. It doesn't have to be the best workout of my life. But when I'm putting out something, when I'm working with a client, I want them to have the best of me.
Yes.
And that means setting my life up, making sure I'm eating breakfast and lunch so that I can give them the best. It's not at the expense of me or in spite of, despite not taking care of myself. If I take care of myself, they're going to get excellence.
Yes.
So it's taking a step back and saying, like, really, what are my values? What are the most important things to me? What are the most important areas of my life? And am I truly showing up with excellence there? Or is the need and the desire to be everything to everybody all the time? And I'm going to be really honest with you, like, this has to be an ongoing process. I've gone on my website, on my coaching website, a time audit, and I do that time audit almost quarterly because when you start to see how you're spending your time, I say, my kids is most important, my business is most important, my mental physical health is the most important, my relationships are most, like, I say those things, and then when you start to see how we're spending time, I'm like, huh, maybe it's time for me to hire somebody to support me with this, or maybe it's time to, like, get off of socials for a little bit. Maybe it's time to um to like integrate a carpool into my life, so that somebody else can pick up my kids once a week so that I can fit in this other thing. It's really important to keep going back to, like, who am I? What do I stand for? What are my values? And then how do I want that expressed into the world with my time and with my energy?
That's a great, I think that's a super tangible next step for everybody listening
Yeah.
is really, really identifying what those values are and how you want to show up, what excellence looks like for you. Define that for yourself because how it looks for you and I is very different. And how it looks for everyone listening is very different. And I think that's part of it, right?
Yeah.
When you get into, throw in comparison and expectations and societal
What is
standards and all
that?
that crap. Yeah. It's like these other little players that like to jump into the mix. But when that stuff starts to creep in, we're getting further and further away from our own values and what excellence means to us. So really just understanding like what is your home base. If you don't know what those pieces are, it's hard to maintain them and prioritize them. So if you
Yeah.
understand what your values are, you can say like, okay, I'm feeling like I'm going to be perfectionism or a perfectionist in this situation, but this isn't one of my values, at least not right now, because your values could
Yeah.
change too. They probably will. Life
You
changes,
should.
goals
Yes.
goals change, people change.
Yes.
So if it's not a value right now, it doesn't mean it's not important. It's just not a focus.
100%. And the when I'm working with my leadership coaching clients, and I say, like, what is your focus for this quarter? And they give me 15 things they want to do. I'm like, that's great. None of this is going to get done. If we don't have the ability to say, what is our main focus? One big rock every quarter, and we can maybe fit in a couple of smaller rocks um, in terms of projects. But if you want to be excellent and you want to produce excellent results, we need to be honest with the time and energy it's going to take in order to produce those results.
Yeah. A question that's kind of popping up that I feel like I really want to chat about is how can you distinguish between perfectionism being like a habit or a lifestyle choice, or if it's a mental health challenge that needs to be looked at from a
Mm.
different perspective?
So this is interesting because Perfectionism is actually not, it's not included in the DSM, right? I think that there, it tends to be a symptom of a lot of different mental health issues. And the truth is, it comes down to, is it impacting your functioning like on a day-to-day basis? And when we talk about, being anxious versus having an anxiety disorder, feeling depressed versus having a diagnosed depressive disorder, those things tend to be like, are you able to function in everyday life? Right? Are you able to say, you know what, this is my value and I'm going to commit to just focusing on this thing right now? Or are you truly filling? And I really encourage people, if you're already questioning, is this something that is a real mental health challenge? Reach out to somebody. Go get seen. What's the worst case that happens? Somebody says to you, you know what? You're feeling anxious and I can support you through this. Or, you know what? I think you've got something else going on. Let's support, let's go really delve deeper into this. What's the downside to that? If somebody is questioning if they deserve support, the answer is always yes. Whether
Mm.
it is, I don't think like I don't my perfectionism um is not a diagnosed mental health, it's not part of a mental health disorder. Let's say. Okay. I still get the support of a therapist. I still have coaches, right? Why are we gonna wait until it is a true mental health issue before we go reach out for support?
Yeah.
And any great coach will know the difference between um, with somebody who requires real mental health support versus somebody who's coming to you with a business life, life coaching or leadership coaching issue.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm glad that we're talking about this because I think that it can be hard to distinguish between the two. And I love that example that you gave. And it comes back to the beginning part of this conversation around vulnerability,
Yeah,
right? Like so many just now, I mean, thank goodness now, better late than never, but now we're talking about mental health. Now we're talking about getting support, going to therapy, different modalities to help support you, wherever you are in your journey. And so it's still kind of new, I think, for people and women
mm,
especially to be able to open up and say, "Hey, this thing's affecting me every day." Much like with
yeah,
the pelvic health help that you were talking about earlier. Like, "Hey, this is affecting me every day. I just thought this was normal. I just thought this is how I should feel
yeah,
every day. I thought everyone felt like this." And so you just kind of like push through, make it happen, figure it out, but you're underlying dealing with this stress every single day, sometimes in every single moment.
yeah. And I think again, it's this idea of like making this happen at the expense of me versus supporting myself to make it happen. There's a huge, again, like it's not a brain body connection. There's if we start to create changes and get support with our mental health, you're actually going to see improvements in your physical health. In fact, we know that brain is an output of uh, pain is an output of the brain. Pain is a danger signal, and when your brain perceives danger, real or perceived, like something actually harms you, or your brain thinks something's going to harm you, you're going to experience pain. And so we have a lot of clients who have like persistent low back pain. And yeah, their pelvic floor responds because their brain thinks there's real danger. They think they're in fight or flight. They have to run away. And what happens when your brain thinks it's been in danger for a long time? Like when I put on my sweater this morning, for those of you who are just listening and cannot see my exquisite gold threaded pink sweater, I put it on and my brain, I have sensory nerves along my skin, and my brain said, uh, like, oh, what's going on there? And there were nerves that sent messages to my brain that said like, there's something heavy on your skin. The brain was like, okay, like have we ever experienced this before? And it's like, yeah, yesterday when I put on my sweater. And the brain will then send messages back to the sensory nerves in my skin and to stop telling me that. I've heard enough. Everything is fine. Stop sending me signals. But when we're in danger for a prolonged period, or your brain thinks it's in danger for a prolonged period, it actually, instead of down regulating that input, instead of saying, stop telling me that message, it actually says, tell me more. So when we get in that loop and it's amplified by anxiousness, it's amplified by depressive symptoms, it's amplified, like we start to experience physical symptoms, and it's brain mediated, but it's not all in our heads. And so we know now that the brain can change. We know that there's a huge there's plasticity in the brain. And so by supporting yourself from a mental health perspective, you're also supporting yourself from a physical perspective, and likewise.
I think that we're just such cool people. Like not just
I'm
you
like,
and me.
isn't anatomy nice? Like cool? Yeah.
Yeah, like all people. I think just like the body and the mind and the soul and our connection and our ability to heal, like we give ourselves way less credit than what we're actually really capable of. And I think what you just shared with us is just yet another piece of proof why that's so incredibly accurate. Listen,
Not all in our heads, but it is changeable.
it is changeable, and I think that that's something that all of us are hungry to latch on to a little bit more
Yeah.
of. Listen, girl, I could talk to you all day long. This stuff fascinates me, but we've kind of come to the close of our hour here together. So I want to make sure that everyone knows where to connect with your fabulous self. And what are some ways that you can help support them?
So we have got, you can download that time audit on my website. It's CHANAROSS.com, S as in Sam. Or you can come follow me on Instagram, Chana Ross PT, CHANAROSS PT. And you can find that lead magnet in my bio. And I'd love to respond and chat with my friends in the DMs. And if you are interested in pelvic health support, I can guide you there. We actually have an online program happening in May called our Leakless Method. It is a 6-week guided pelvic health program. All of the exercises, all of the bladder diaries. You will watch yourself improve. We're going to talk about brain, body, pelvic health, everything your body ever needed to know. And so you can slide into my DMs, and I'd be thrilled to support you there.
Amazing. We'll make sure we link all of that in the show notes as well. And my final question is, what does the word gutsy mean to you?
It means the willingness to take a leap and support yourself regardless of what the outcome is.
Well, that's juicy. I love it. Chana, thank you so much for your energy, for your wisdom, for what you're doing to and with women around the world. You know, the work that you do is so incredibly needed and appreciated. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
You heard a lot today about how perfectionism really is rooted inside of the brain. And it's one of the primary reasons that I created the Foundations for Getting Out of Your Own Head podcast experience. These are not episodes that you're going to find here on the Gutsy podcast. Rather, it's private. It's getting delivered directly to you. And so if you're ready to really get out of your own way, to break some old habits, to really take your steps forward, go to lauraora.com/foundations and get the free episode. It's going to come to your inbox almost immediately. I'd love to hear what you took away from today's episode, so connect with me. I'm on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. You can find me using @thatlauraora. And as always, until I see you next time, stay gutsy.